Excellent, guys. So hopefully you can see my slides now. Now, I don't want to scare you guys too much, but most schools have their trials around about the 1st of August. Now, that may change a little bit due to Corona, but for the moment, we should assume that that's the norm. Now, if the 1st of August is roughly your trial date, that means that you have, the sort of challenge of only 72 days until your HSC trials, which is, I think, certainly a little concerning, right? Not that far away. So, great. Week 5, that means you've got maybe 80 days, right? Maybe 85, not a whole lot. Or 30 in the case of Peter. Oh no, that is not good at all. Now, some of you may already feel that your marks are sort of locked in. As in that, you've had a couple of assessments internally so far, you haven't done so well, and it's like, should I just give up? Am I totally screwed? Does anyone feel that way? Right? And just let me know in the chat if you sort of feel like, yeah, it's too late, I'm sort of screwed. What on earth am I going to do? How do I turn things around? Okay, I can see a lot of yeses, and sometimes I'm stuffed. Hell yeah, we're seeing lots come through here. Now, what I got to first highlight, guys, is before we sort of look at the strategies, we've got to grapple with this question of, in fact, is everything screwed? Is it too late? Can you actually turn things around? So, what I want to highlight is when I was in year 12, I wanted to be a professional athlete, guys. Honestly, my grades across year 11 weren't crash hot. They weren't also that great for a number of my subjects in year 12. In particular, I had a goal to get 99.6 to go to law school. Now, the crazy thing about that was, I wasn't doing the work, but I wanted to get into that crazy high ATAR course. And I got to about term 2 and my 3 unit maths, I took 3 unit maths as one of my subjects, looked like an absolute bomb, right? Like I was not doing well. My marks for 3 unit maths were, if I was lucky, I was passing, right? I mean, I think I passed one of the assessments I'd had by the time I hit term 2. Now, the reason I share this is that by the end of year 12 for my HSC, I ended up getting an overall mark of 88%. It actually counted for my ATAR. Now, I don't share that to brag because it was certainly a challenging subject for me across the entire way. I share that just as an example that you can turn things around. And I'm going to be able to show you how you can today. There are practical things that you can do that will make a huge difference. Now, in the end, really fortunate, managed to somehow get that ATAR, which was amazing. I didn't believe it at the time. And 3 unit maths, which was the subject that I thought I had screwed and was going to bring me down, actually was one of the key things that enabled me to get over the line. Now, over the last decade, guys, I've interviewed and researched with over 2,500 students that scored ATARs over 98. And one of the things that I found in all of that research, guys, is that these guys who achieved amazing results, it wasn't all perfect, smooth sailing for them either. It wasn't like they went through and they nailed every single assessment, nailed the HSC trials, nailed the HSC exams, all done. Okay, it didn't work like that. In fact, it's almost inevitable that in the internal assessment, students were screwing things up. And the key, therefore, in enabling them to actually get their results at the end of the journey was how they came in and approached their trials and their HSC external exams. That was the key in the turnaround. And so I want to share that because it can be super easy to think right now, as many of you felt, man, I've screwed it. I'm not going to be able to turn things around. And actually, there's a lot of time and marks available to turn things around. So I'm going to be sharing with you not just what worked for me, although certainly I'll share some strategies that worked for me. What I'm going to be also sharing with you guys is the result from the research that we have done with students. Now, it is possible to catch up, and I know that because I lead an organization called Artist Smart. We support thousands of students every single year navigate the HSC. And on average, the students that we support, we see their marks on average improve by 19.4%. So to put that in context, that's an average. So on average, students are going from, let's say, a 60 to an 80, a 70 to a 90. Some students are doing much, much more than that. So I just want to say as well, I see students every single year hit term 2, feel like they've screwed everything, and then dramatically turn it around by the end of the HSC. So I know, okay, that if they can do it, so can you. And I don't know you personally, but I know the fact that you're on here, you're dedicating an hour of your time on a Thursday after school to try to work out how to do this. So Let's look at the plan of attack. We're going to look at 4 key things, okay, guys? We're going to look at, is it possible to actually catch up? Because ultimately, I'm sure, short of me sharing a couple of examples of myself or other people, you're still going to have some doubts, and we need to get rid of that so that you can see the opportunity. So that's going to be a little bit about the why, about why you should keep on fighting. We're then going to look at what, okay? Like, what do you actually need to do differently? Because there's going to be key things you're going to need to change. And then finally, we're going to look at the how, okay? So the key for today is we've got why, what, and we've got how, and we're going to be looking really across these 3 areas. And our goal then is to hit that sweet spot across the 3 of them, so you have your plan of attack that you can build at the end of today that'll take you towards your trials. Now, I am getting your questions coming through the chat, which is amazing. If I can answer them as we go, I will. Otherwise, I'll keep them for the Q&A at the end. So now let's jump in and look a little bit at the why, right? Now, the first thing I want to highlight is most of the time when we think about the HSC, we view it in terms of time. And we need to really understand that there are 2 different ways we can view this, through the lens of time or through the lens of marks. And if we shift our frame, we're going to see that there's a huge opportunity that all of you have open to you to change. Now, right now, you're here. So, you've done term 4. That was 2019. We're now 2020. You did term 1, and now, we're roughly what? It's week 4 in term 2. We've got another term where HSC Trials will sit in here, and then we've got HSC exams. And if you look at it from this perspective, right, we're roughly somewhere around 65 to 75% of the way through the HSC year in terms of time, okay? Yeah, the timeline is a little scary, right? So it feels like we're a huge way through in terms of time, right? Which is why it's easy to think, man, I'm screwed, I've failed this thing. And in fact, if we view the HSC as a marathon, guys, if you were you were running a marathon, it's 42 kilometers long, and you were more than halfway through that marathon in terms of kilometers, and you were at the end, you would go, man, I've got no chance, I'm just going to give up. And often we think of the HSC like a marathon. But what I want to sort of share with you is that ultimately, right, your internal marks are only worth 50%, and we need to shift the perspective from time to mark. If we do that, you're going to see something really cool. Now, if we look at that for a moment, right, you're currently here. You've had assessment 1. Now, usually your first assessment, guys, is typically worth, let's say it's about 20% usually. Okay, they usually start off a little slow. Okay, and then we get into assessment 2. Maybe it's worth 25%. Now, some of you may not have assessment number 3. Some schools, because of COVID, have entirely got rid of this. Okay, but some schools are, and they're just reducing the amount of weighting. So this assessment here is probably worth anywhere from 15 to 25%. So this is currently where you're at, okay? So if we look at it from this perspective, okay, let's assume that you've done 40, this group in here, guys, is 45%. Okay, and if you just finished this current assessment, you might not have had this assessment yet. It might be there. It might be coming up. If we add that into it, right, 45 plus, let's say the 25, okay, we're at 70% of your total assessment. Now, that's why it feels like you are 70% of the way through the HSC. But what I want to highlight, okay, is that, as we said, typically, your trials will be worth anywhere from 30 to 40% internally. And that's simply just due to COVID and the impact that it's had. Now, what we've got to remember, though, is if all of your internal is only worth 50%, these numbers all change dramatically. And I just want to share what these look like for you. So 50%, and then if we do this, this is worth probably about 12.5. This is worth about 12.5. This assessment might be worth 10%. So actually, if we start planning this out, right, the internals that you've done have not actually been worth that much, okay? So if we think about it, you've done 25, 35 of your internal, right? So your trials will be worth 15%. Now, my point of all of this is to highlight, even though you feel like you were 60 to 70% through, okay, the HSC, the actual end result is that you still have, if we do the maths right, so you've got 65 to 75% of your HSC left on the table. So what that means is you've only done, really, if we think about it, maybe 30 to 35% of your HSC. So if you've screwed that, okay, not amazing, definitely, but actually you've got a huge amount of marks available. So the key thing here is that right now what most students do is they quit. Okay, they quit. They basically go, you know what? I've screwed up all my assessments. I'm just going to give up. And because most students quit, it creates two interesting opportunities for you. The first, okay, is that if you actually start trying, your ranks can improve considerably because a lot of other people give up. And secondly, you've actually got 70% of your marks available. So if you do well over that 70%, it can have a huge contribution to your overall results. So I just want to share that because that's why actually the HSC is not like a marathon. And this is there's a very famous video of one of our Australian athletes winning a gold medal in the speed skating, right? And the video, because I've pulled it in so I can write on it, the video doesn't work here, but the point is that he's coming last, and then in the last straight, everyone else falls over and he goes through and he wins. And that's really how I want you to think about the HSC, is that if you've got 50% of your marks in your final HSC, 70% with your trial and HSC, if you just keep on going, everyone else starts to fall over, and that's how you actually significantly turn your results around. Now, if you still need some more hope here, guys, there are some other things to be mindful of, and that is that 1 in 2 students get accepted into university courses below the cutoff for university. And I can prove that to you. These are some data from Fairfax Media that basically shows the number of students that got accepted into the universities if they had an ATAR below the cutoff, and that was up to 10 points below the cutoff, which is really crazy. But what I want you to do is I want you to actually go and look at your desired university course. You can go to UAC for this, okay? And you can see here, this is engineering at UTS as an example. I've just included it here. And what we can see is that, look, we've got, the lowest selection rank, we've got a median, highest, but we've actually got the lowest ATAR they accepted. So we want to look at this table here. And we can see that while they've accepted students that have got pretty high ATARs, okay, ultimately we've seen that they've accepted a whole lot of students with an ATAR considerably lower. So what you want to do is go and find your course, identify the range so that you can get some hope as well. Okay, great. Even if I might not hit this mark, maybe I can get somewhere between the lowest cutoff and the median ATAR. And if I can get into that cutoff range there, I'm going to get a pretty good opportunity of getting an offer. So what does all this mean? Well, guys, I've already highlighted, whatever you do, please keep on going. Do not quit. Now is not the time to quit. In fact, it is the most important time to dive in and get your work. Now, med is a little different, Namrita, just to answer that. Med, because it is so competitive, ultimately, depending on the university you're wanting to go to, there's going to be, a tighter range, but it does apply for a significant amount of courses. So please keep on going. Do not quit. Now, what you've got to do as a result is give yourself the best shot of getting into your ATAR range. That's the goal, which is why we want to focus on the turnaround, the catch-up, so that you can make the most of the 70% that is coming. Media, yes. Law, depending on the university, Ricky. Go to uac.com. You can check it out. Sydney University, really, really tight with law, for example. UNSW, a little more flexible. UTS, Macquarie, Western Sydney, ACU, Notre Dame, they're a lot more flexible with it, okay? So if the median was 83 and you get an ATAR of 80, yes, John, that sounds pretty good. You want to just check what the lowest cutoff is that was accepted as well. Of course, the closer you are to the median, the better ultimately when you look at the range, okay? Fantastic. So now the next thing we've got to think about, guys, in this turnaround is once you have a bit of an idea of what your ATAR goal is and the range that you're wanting to put yourself into, you've got to go and think about, well, what actually is the marks I might need to try to achieve in my trials and my HSC exams to turn this around? What's the goal that I need to set for myself? Because you don't have a goal, it's going to be hard to develop a plan, to work out the amount of work that you need to do. So everything really starts from a goal. So what I want you to think about, and as I said, I'm going to share a workbook with you at the end of today, which will have all of this so that you can actually plug it in, is I want you to think about for your specific subjects, okay, what is your goal mark going to be for your trials? Now, of course, you might be like, oh, I want to get 90% band 6, right? But ultimately, if you're not doing so well right now, you might need to think about, instead of doing that, you might need to think of having a staggered approach, which is like, okay, how do I turn things around? Well, first step is if I've maybe just got a 50 now, let's try to set for a 70 or like a band 4 for my HSC trials, or maybe a very low band 5. And then let's use that as the foundation for my HSC exams. But I want you to take the time to write down your goals, right? You know, to write down, okay, for modern history, you know, I'm going to try to get an 81% here. I'm going to then try to get a 93% in my HSC exams. And that's going to help me turn it around, because overall that's worth 70%. So I want you to write your goal marks down. If you don't have a goal for your trials, honestly, you're not going to do the work that you need to, and I'm not going to know how to help you through the strategies, right? And you're not going to know how to help yourself with how much, you know, which strategy you might apply, how much work you put in. So please go and set some goals. So that's the why. That's why you should be fighting, guys. You've got really good reasons to fight, dive in, and to actually turn things around for your HSC. So what I want to sort of look at now is, well, what should you do, okay? So now it's the what, like what are the practical things that you need to do, which is going to help you turn this around. So strategy number 1, and I'm going to say this as nicely as I can. I think all of you on this call, all on this webinar, are probably a tiny bit insane. And I say that really nicely, okay? You know, the reason I say that is Albert Einstein has a very famous quote. You know, he says that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And the reason I'm saying that is one of the things that I have noticed is that when it comes to assessments and HSC, I see students time and time again doing the same approach. So, you know, you get an assessment, you know, you do your prep, then you get your results back, you look at it, you're like, man, that sucks, I hate it, throw it in the bin, not look at it again. You get your next assessment notification, and then same sort of habit, same sort of pattern occurs in how you prep for it, but you got your fingers crossed, you got your toes crossed, you're hoping that, you know, your marks are going to miraculously change. And so the point I'm trying to highlight here is you're not going to change your results between your current assessments and your trials and your HSC unless you make some explicit changes in what you do. And we need to be really upfront about that. To catch up, to turn your results around, we've got to make some change. Now, what do you need to change? Ultimately, guys, you're actually going to know probably what you need to do, but you just haven't taken the time to reflect on this. And so the first activity I want you to do, okay, after you jump off and you've got the workbook and you're filling it out, or you can do it while we're going through now if you've got pen and paper to write, is I want you to identify, okay, well, for each of the subjects that, you know, some of you shared, some of you had said, oh, you know, I'm struggling with modern history. Some of you had said English. Some of you had said maths or physics, right? I want you to, okay, write the subject down like I'm doing here. And I want you to just be really honest with yourself and go, hey, what have I honestly been doing in the lead up for my assessments for these subjects in the past? Like, what have I been doing? And, you know, it might be that you could be really honest to say, well, you know what, I read the texts, but I didn't really do anything more. I wrote like one practice essay, you know, really like 3 days before for English, and, you know, I memorized it. Okay, I want you to just write down like what it is that your approach was. Because I think by doing that, you're then going to see really quickly, yeah, wow, like honestly, that's why I'm doing poorly. Like I didn't really do anything, okay? Exactly. Lol, writing a practice essay, come here. Exactly. So this is the point. By writing it down, you're going to really quickly discover, okay, well, this is like the inputs that might be creating the outputs. Now, what I then want you to do is I want you to have a moment to think about, well, okay, looking at this, what should I actually change and do differently? Now, I'm going to share some strategies with you in a moment, strategy 2, 3, 4, 5 and beyond. But I want you, when you're doing this, to just be really honest and think, well, what are my teachers always going on about? You know, what are my friends going? If you've got a tutor, what are they going on about, right? Like, actually think about what are the actions you should take. You know, so it might be that you need to write some more T-tables, right, which deconstruct. You might need to write some more practice paragraphs. You know, maybe you need to actually get a bit of feedback on one of your responses more than sort of 3 days before. I want you to think through what is it that you need to do differently, because if you don't change it, your results won't change, you won't catch up. So that's sort of the first place that we need to start, guys. Super simple. Now, strategy number 2, once we've done that, the first thing that you need to start doing in terms of catch up, all right, the absolute first thing you need to do, actually, I'd love you guys to guess. Let's have a little quick guess, right? If we're thinking about catching up, what do you think? Just let me know in the chat. what do you think is the first thing that you should do to start catching up? Practice quiz, content, notes, just do it. Write notes, practice papers, awesome. I love all of these suggestions, guys. Fantastic. Now, no one has yet guessed correctly. Some of you guys are pretty close, right? Which is great, but no one has actually nailed it, okay? Yes, Serena, thank you. Amazing. Serena has got it. Find out what you struggle in and you got to focus on that. Ultimately, that is really, really key, okay? If we're talking about catch up here, what we've got to look at is you're not going to have time to do everything, right? Honestly, while we might want to go back to like topic 1 and move through in a really linear, organized fashion, if we've got 72 days until trials, you're not going to get the time to do everything. You're going to have to pick the things that matter most. So we need to focus on a couple of key areas. Now, this is a strategy, by the way, and all the strategies I'm sharing, as I said, have come from students that we've supported and interviewed and done research with. So Jasmine, as an example, Jasmine was her marks at the end of at the start of term 2 was 60% for advanced maths. Ended up getting an overall HSC mark of 90%. So she had a 30% turnaround. Okay, so this strategy, she used it for maths. It doesn't just apply for maths, but I'm sharing it as a real practical example of something that students have done. Now, what Jasmine did and what I'd recommend is whenever you have a poor performance, right, in sport or music, it's often pretty easy to sort of realize what you screwed up on. Like if you played sport and you lost, maybe it was because, you were too unfit, your defense sucked, you couldn't shoot, the basket properly if it was netball or basketball. Or if it was music, you'd realize there was a certain part, right, of the song that you were playing that you just kept on getting stuck on. So they're often pretty easy to identify where, you weren't so good at. When it comes to whole course, like the HSC course, most of the courses have 100 syllabus dot points per subject. It can be really hard just to, on the top of your mind, remember, oh yeah, that's what I struggled with. And Shweta and Nemrita, I will answer your question on that in a moment, okay? In terms of if you struggle with everything. So the key here is the first thing that I would like you to do to sort of start this catch-up strategy is to go back and get all your prior assessments out. Go back and actually retake the mistakes that you made from your prior assessments. Because ultimately what we tend to do is we tend to like make mistakes and then collect them and make more and collect more and then deposit them all in our trials or HSC. So our goal is we've got to try to fix some of these issues that have emerged in the year so that then you don't repeat them in your trials. So the first step is you want to use the feedback, and you're going to use the feedback to identify your weak areas. And you're going to do this for each of your subjects. These are the key areas that you're going to prioritize and focus on because you're not going to get the time to do everything. Then secondly, as I said, you're going to retake the mistakes from prior assessments as the first step in trying to catch up, because it's going to be a test. Maybe you've actually solved it and you understand it now. Maybe since making that assessment, you're sort of getting it and great, you can then go, cool, I don't actually need to spend as much time. But maybe you have another crack at it and you still don't get it. And then that's why it's going to become an area that you identify as a key weak area that you're going to need to focus your study on. Now, if you're feeling overwhelmed by all your subjects, this is still going to be helpful, okay? Because clearly, even if, let's just go worst case scenario, all right? Even if you got 30% in an assessment, okay, so not a great result, it still means that there's 30% of the course that you probably should prioritize lower to cover than the 70% that you got wrong, okay? So the point of this is it's going to, even if you're feeling massively overwhelmed for a subject, start to help by at least pushing some stuff off to the side that you can not worry about as much and maybe grapple with later on. Now, there's a way that we can sort of start helping the overwhelmed guys, and that is we've ultimately got to get this out of your head. If you just sort of look at it as a big picture and go, man, I just feel like I got 30%, I got 40%, I just suck at everything, right? That's going to feel like, well, I don't know where to start. So the feedback here is about identifying weak areas and ideally like topics, and maybe even if you can in some areas, if it's a specific syllabus dot point. Okay, and you're going to write that down because that's going to help you start feeling like, all right, this is actually manageable. So what I want you to then do is write it down. You write your subject down. Okay, so, let's just do English as an example. You do English and maybe right now you go, you know what, I absolutely got slammed in my mod A essay. So I need to go back and review that. And I'm really struggling at the moment with the unseen sections in the common module. So I need to go back and do a little bit of focus on that. Okay. Maybe if it was, chemistry or modern history, okay, you're going back and maybe for modern, it was like, hey, my source analysis, or, it was essay writing, okay, like my essays sucked, particularly on a certain area. Or for chem, maybe you're like, oh, my titration is just really not good. I was really struggling with it. I need to go back, identify it. Now, for some of you, I can see Anisha and Felicity and Masumi are saying, well, look, what happens, if you just can't let go of that? Well, actually, that's okay, all right? Like, I think what we need to sort of do is that if you haven't actually processed and gone through it and identified a pathway forward for those challenging areas, it can be really hard to let go of it, okay? It can be really emotional. And what we want to try to do here is turn it from something that's just, an emotional overwhelm to going, okay, cool, let's process this. What are the specific areas that I did not do well at? And then from the next step we're going to do, we're going to start to develop a plan on what you can do to turn that specific area around. And then rather than letting go, guys, what we're trying to do is to actually build. We're trying to use it rather than hide it. Because letting go implies that you're letting it go and you're just not going to think about it again. You're not going to worry about it again. And actually, we don't want that to happen, because if you let it go, you're going to make the mistake again in your trials and in your HSC. So really important. We don't want to let it go. We want to use it. We want to use it as fuel to identify what you've got to focus on. So strategy number 3, now that we've sort of identified the mistakes that we've made, the weak areas, we've got a hit list of our weak areas for each of our subjects, okay? We've retaken the mistakes to start working out actually where are we at with these. What we need to think about is, well, how do we start planning in terms of our use of time? Now, I don't want to scare you guys too much, but maybe a little bit, okay? Ultimately, if we think about it, if there's 72 days, give or take, until your trials, if you study for 3 hours every single day, you've got 216 total hours of study time. And if you take 6 subjects, that equates to about 36 hours per subject of study time. Now, that's to catch up and prep for your trials. Now, I share that because this is proof that you won't be able to do everything, okay? Right? I think that's the critical thing, right? We need to prioritize, but we need to set a bit of a plan. Now, this is something that Emerson's another student we supported. We helped her for HSC English. Her marks at the start of term 2 were 50%. She ended up getting an overall mark of 86%, guys. So she turned things around in a very short period of time, improved by 36%. And something that Emerson did that was incredibly powerful, and so many other students we've supported and done research with, what she started to look at was, okay, hey, let's zoom out for a moment. Because most of the time when we start getting a bit overwhelmed, all we try to look at often is like what's immediately in front of us and the fact that there's so much stuff to do. And that can be really overwhelming. And it can also mean that we then don't do the work in advance, so that it gets more and more overwhelming as we go, because we start to feel further and further behind. So what we want to think about is, right now we are in week 4. Now, your school might have changed up the weeks, but if it was a normal school term, right, it's week 4. So if you're in week 4 right now, this is you right here. It's likely that most schools have their trials around about week 3. Now, I know some of you move the trials back to week 5. Some schools have moved it back a little bit later, okay? But most schools will have trials right about here, okay? So what we want to think about is we actually want to start to work backwards from our trial day to start to plan when things need to happen. So the point of this is, ultimately, we probably want to get to a point where, let me just change the color, really by about here, okay, we have done our sort of core catch-up, okay, which I think is really important, because then that actually gives you then this 4-week period here to actually do some prep for your trial. So this gives you all of this period here for trial prep, which is really important. Because I think the thing that we've got to distinguish, okay, is we've got to distinguish between catching up and trial prep. They're 2 different things. Like, catch up is I've got to fix some of the challenges and the holes that I've got from prior content. And then trial prep is, okay, now that I've fixed that, how do I make sure I go and build my exam technique? How do I go and do those practice responses and those past papers and those essays under time conditions? Now, this is a dream world, right? Having 4 weeks is absolute dream. I get that. Maybe what it's going to end up being is you only get it done here and then, you've got 3 weeks. But we want to try to aim for the ideal world that you've got a 4-week buffer zone, essentially, between catch-up and trials. So that means we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks. We're almost at the end of week 4 right now. So this gives us a 6-week period to think about catch-up. Now, what that means we want to start to do is we want to start to identify from that hit list of the week topics that we identified for our subject, okay? We want to start to identify, well, what do I need to do each week for that subject to sort of catch up? Now, I get that, some of you guys, Celia, for example, have got in 4 more half-yearlies in term 2, week 6, which will be here. One of the things that you'll have to manage is, yes, you may have internal assessments that go on top of all of this as well, which can be really challenging. So it's why you might need to think, are those informal assessments worth anything? If they're not, maybe you might see how you can then align your catch-up preparation on weak areas with the prep that you do for the actual assessment, okay? So if you've got trials in week 10 of this term, wow, Tegan and Nicole, I feel so sorry for you guys. And Ashley, that's horrible. I can't believe that, they're doing that to you so early. That is very, very early. If you're in that position, then really what you would be aiming to do is I would be having a plan to go, how do I do my catch up in this 4-week period? And then if it's week 10, if it's 9 and 10, it's a little bit challenging, okay? I would actually then, now that I think about it, I would probably, oops, guys, and yes, it is being recorded, guys, and you will get a recording afterwards as well. And if you stick on at the end, guys, there will be a workbook that will be sent as well that will go through all of these exercises with you that you can do in the workbook. If you've got it in week 9 and 10, you've really only got a 3-week period for catch-up. Okay, so you've got a 3-week period for catch-up, and then you've got a 2-week period for like exam prep, so you can do like a lot of past papers, etc. So unfortunately, it's just going to shrink the time period. The point of this is work backwards, right? When are your trials? What's the buffer period you need to do some exam prep, past papers? Okay, when do I have time to get this stuff done by? Now, what I want you to therefore do is we need to start, in addition to working on your weak areas, right? The weak areas tells you these are the topics I need to focus on. It doesn't give you the tasks you need to do. So what Emerson did in turning her results around for English, what Jasmine did, who I shared a bit earlier, who turned her marks around for maths, is that they wrote a catch-up list. And that catch-up list is for the subject that you're working on, and with all the weak topics or the weak areas that you've identified, from the prior strategy. What you're then going to do is you're going to write down what are all the actions I need to take. So I need to write notes for mod 5 chemistry or physics because I'm behind on it and I didn't do it. Maybe I've got to write a practice essay for my common module because I didn't write one. I did like a multimodal for that, right? You'll go through and you'll write out what's the catch-up list that I need to do. And you write that catch-up list down, okay? Keeping in mind, really importantly, keeping in mind the weak areas for the subject, because that's what those catch-up tasks need to relate to. Does that make sense? So we're just taking those weak areas, we're turning them into a catch-up list, and that then leads us to strategy number 4, okay? And strategy number 4 is one that Dash used. So look, Dash, marks at the start of term 2 was 76%. She was really wanting to get a band 6, okay? In the end, she managed to turn around a 15% improvement to get 91%. Now, in answer to the question, Michelle, you go back over your prior assessment results, essentially, and you look at them, you identify the mistakes you made, you identify that as a weak area, you retake your mistake, and if you retake the mistake and you're okay, then it's maybe not as weak as you thought, and you might move it to a lower priority. So that's basically what you need to do. Excellent. Thank you, Nemrita, for answering that question for Evelyn as well. So what did Dash do? Right, well, not just Dash, right? Again, as I said, this is a strategy that we've seen, thousands of, high-performing students use to sort of catch up and turn things around. we've got to look at something that we call the law of the feedback loop. And I guess what I want to highlight here, and I'm just going to add a little page, guys, so that I can explain this to you, so that we can see this in action. And that is that right now, if we think about the journey that you have, right, this is you, okay, and you know, you'll go along and, you know, you'll maybe do some practice work, you maybe do a bit of study for an exam, then you'll have the exam, okay, and then what will happen after the exam is you will get feedback. Now, that feedback's really important, okay? The problem is that often that feedback identifies and shows you all the mistakes that you have made, okay? Which is not good. Now, the problem with this feedback is when you get it here, is this the best or the worst time to get it? Okay, I think it's pretty apparent, okay, that it's ultimately the worst time to get that feedback, because ultimately you can't do anything about it short of just trying to use it for the next assessment. Those marks are locked in. What we've got to think about doing, therefore, is how do we actually get your feedback from here and move it before your exam so that you're getting feedback earlier, as early as possible, so that you can identify what the key things are, okay, that you know, you might have needed to fix before you went into the exam, okay? That's right, they won't always cover a whole exam, Michelle, but it's going to give you a sense of some of your weak areas as a starting point. Doing a little bit of some exam questions can help on that. So coming back to this, guys, we need to move your feedback loop from after an exam to before, particularly with trials, particularly with HSC. You want to get as much feedback in the next 4 to 6 weeks as possible so that you know what you need to really fix before you actually get into the actual assessment. Now, the reason this is important is that the way we learn ultimately, okay, is we take an action, we get some information about how we went, and then we hopefully make some changes, okay, to that, and then we take another action, and this is known as the feedback loop. And essentially, the more times we can actually navigate as quickly as possible through this feedback loop, the better we get. So one of the things that we saw high-performing students do is that there were two things they did, but it was related. Firstly, they received feedback on their work earlier than other students, right? They were super active in getting feedback as early as possible. And secondly, they got more feedback, okay? They asked for much more feedback. They were two critical things around turnarounds and catching up when students had really made some screw-ups in prior assessments. So what does this mean? How do we actually apply this for you? Well, a couple of ways, right? One, you want to submit as much feedback as you can to your teacher. Really, really critical. Now, again, I want you to look at this term. What most students will tend to do, okay, is trials clearly are here, okay, and what will happen is that most students will start submitting work to teachers here, all right? Start submitting. That's when it'll happen. Now, is that a good time or a bad time to start submitting work to a teacher? What do you guys reckon? Let me know in the chat. Yeah, it's bad, right? Because A, everyone's doing it. Everyone's submitting at the same time, okay? And they're on holidays, they're time poor, they're probably not that interested. So the next thing we've got to think about when we're creating that plan, okay, of the catch-up that you're going to do, the weak areas, the catch-up list, you want to think about, okay, when do I need to give my teachers some stuff to mark so that I can get feedback on it earlier? And so rather than maybe doing huge amounts of work and waiting for an entire essay to be able to be completed, what you should start to do is, what's the smallest little things I can start giving a teacher for feedback? Is it an intro? You know, is it a paragraph? Is it like 3 multi-choice questions? Is it 1 short answer question? Right? Is it a 2-marker question? Right? What are small things that you can start giving it to your teacher? And great, Nemrita, thank you for answering that. Some great advice there for Courtney and Lily. So I want you to think, when do you need to get this feedback? So it might be, okay, actually, that the sweet spot zone of when you want to submit stuff is probably about here, okay, because it means that you'll get feedback before the holidays, okay, so that you then have information that you can take into your holidays to help you with your study for your trials after the holidays, okay? So really, really critical. That's going to be probably like the ideal, or at the same time, probably the latest you would want to, right? So that you can get the feedback for the holidays for your trial. So I want you to put this into your plan, right? In terms of when we start to map out what you're going to do each week as part of your catch up, we want to identify when am I going to get feedback and how can I do it as the smallest possible thing so it's easy for my teacher to mark it. They don't take 3 weeks because they're so overwhelmed with all the stuff everyone's been sending them. Right? It's a small, nice little thing that they can actually mark and return. And you could even do that on a weekly basis. You could make a point as part of your catch-up that you're going to submit one short answer to your teacher every week, okay? Or that you're going to submit, one paragraph for an essay each week. And that way you're getting a little bit of feedback, you're accelerating your feedback loop, and you're working iteratively on improving those weak areas. Bummer on the echo, guys. As I said, there's not a whole lot I can do. So let's persist, and there will be a recording that will tighten up, and I'll send you a recording after. So hopefully that is going to be nice and solid. Now, the final thing I'd be recommending here before I go into the final strategy where we pull all of this together and then we go into some Q&A time, is that in all of the research we did and all of the work we've done in supporting students with our tutoring and our mentoring and helping them turn things around, is that teaching others is one of the most powerful ways that you can actually massively accelerate your feedback loop. The reason is, number one, it's fun, it's pretty social, and whenever you teach someone, the real benefit is you get instant feedback. They will look at you and they will say, you know what, that makes absolutely no sense. What on earth are you going on about? Or they might say, amazing, that's fantastic. What about X, Y, Z? So you get immediate feedback, which means that it's easier for you to get feedback quicker and you get more of it. So our suggestion would be each week over the rest of this term, pair up with one friend in the same subject as you and go through each of you your week topic list and start teaching each other your week topic list, okay? Really, really important. So that way you're starting to help each other, you're getting a feedback loop, and it's gonna help and support, okay, your ability to actually fix these weak areas. And you're gonna do it with another friend, right? So it's gonna be a little bit more collaborative and a little bit more motivating as well, which is really important. So strategy number 5, we need to start bringing this all together now. Now, really importantly, guys, failing to plan is planning to fail. If we've only got 36 hours per subject, remember that? The maths that we calculated said that we have, 72 days, we have 216 hours total, and we've got 36 hours per subject. If you don't have a plan on how you're going to actually get your work done, you're not going to catch up. So we need to get a plan in place. Now, this is essentially something that Ben did, and it changed the game for Ben. Start of term 2, Ben's marks for physics were 30%, guys, okay? Crazy. He ended up getting an overall HSC mark of 69%, so he massively turned that around. 39% improvement over a really short period of time. Now, Abby, yes, it is being recorded. And there will be a workbook that should be sent to you guys pretty shortly in the next 5 minutes if you stay on, that you can then go and do all these exercises with as well. So just to highlight, right, now what did Ben do that was a game changer for him? He actually created something that we call a wall chart, okay? Now, a wall chart's super basic but really powerful. It's called a wall chart because literally you are going to stick it on your wall. That is really, really important, okay? The reason you're going to stick it on your wall, guys, is because if it's out of sight, you're not going to see it, you're not going to do it, and you're going to fall behind. So you want to make sure that you can see it so that you actually you do it, right? Because we need to turn things around. We need to catch up. So what does it look like? Well, guys, it's super simple. Okay, now that we've gone through, and remember, we've identified a bunch of things, okay? We have identified your weak areas. We have identified your goal marks, so you know what you're working towards. We have identified your catch-up lists, okay? We've identified when you need to submit work, okay, to your teacher for feedback. We've identified all of that. What we now need to do is we need to map it out for each of your subjects in terms of actually what you're going to do each week, so you've got accountability. So for example, right, it might be right now, let's just, we can do a quick example for English together. It might be Week 5 right now might be, I'm assuming, and most of you guys doing like Mod B, for example, it might be that you need to actually like finish writing like your T-table notes for Mod B. For English, maybe, week 6, it's actually go back and rework your common module essay and submit for feedback. Okay. Maybe week 7 is, you're going to go back and look at module A. Week 8, maybe that you're going to try to go and write maybe a discursive for Mod C to get some feedback on it. Maybe week 9, you might do a persuasive for Mod C. This is the point. You're going to sort of map out, essentially, okay, what is the thing that you need to do for that subject each week so that you can catch up. Now, the great part about this, guys, is it means that, one, you don't need to let go, as I said, about those bad results. You're going to use them as fuel. Number 2, right, it makes it less overwhelming because you can see, oh, cool, this is achievable, right? Like, I can do this. I've just got 1 thing, 2 things I've got to do each week, and if I keep on track with this, I'm going to be able to get it done in time. Remember, we want to do this so that you've got the buffer zone, so that you've got this 4-week here as like a trial buffer. Okay, so this is going to be your trial buffer to get your study done. So remember, the goal is to try to do the catch up for there so that you've got a bit of buffer for your HSC trials. Okay, now, yes, it will be. That's the point, Michelle, but it'll help you see, okay, for each subject, here's the thing I need to do. And ultimately, it's across a whole week, right? But it'll help you say, well, maybe I've planned too much for this week. I'm not probably going to get that done. I need to move things around a little bit. So it's going to enable you in a single place to see exactly what you need to do for all your subjects to turn things around. You're going to pop it on the wall, remember, really, really critical, so that you can see it, your siblings can see it, your parents can see it, share it with a friend so they can keep you accountable to it as well, which is really important. So that way, you've got people checking in and helping you with it. So now, ultimately, what you're going to have to go away and do, guys, is take all of this and map it out, right? As I said, the workbook, hopefully the workbook is already coming through maybe in another minute or even now. It should have maybe popped through to you guys, hopefully, so that you can take it. There's a link. You can copy it and you can actually map out in that workbook all of this and build out your plan. Now, as a quick summary, guys, before we move into the Q&A, where I'll answer some of your questions, because I can see you guys have been leaving me a bunch of questions here, which is fantastic. It hasn't come yet. No worries, Abby. It will shortly. I'll just have a look to make sure when it's coming. I think it has come from having a look. But I'll link it in there for you as well, and it will come via email. It would have come as an offer, guys. It would have come as a pop-up. And then you just needed to click it. Yeah, exactly. Chick under offers, guys. Great. Now, what is this quick summary? Well, number 1, guys, we talked about setting your goal. We need to be clear on what it is you're trying to achieve for your trials. Number 2, what are you going to change, right? If you don't change something between now and your trials, your results will not change. So we need to be really clear about what that is. We then need to identify the weak areas because you're not going to be able to do it all. You've got to be able to focus on a couple of key things to catch up. And that's going to be the way you're going to focus on it. We're then going to write a catch-up list so that you can start to identify the key things you're going to need to do, so it's not just all in your head. It's actually out of your head plan. It's going to reduce the stress and the overwhelm. You're then going to increase your feedback loop by submitting things to your teacher if you can on a weekly basis, and you're going to start teaching a friend on your weak areas that you identified every single week. And then you're going to pull all of this, guys, together really, really critically into this wall chart, right, which is essentially your big plan of attack that you can use to actually stay on top of things. Now, none of the stuff I've shared, guys, is particularly complex or challenging, okay? I think that's the important thing. It's actually a pretty simple process to turn things around. It's just a matter of you've got to go through and do these steps and do the work. And, I know these work because, as I said, we've supported thousands of students with this. The research we did with top performing students showed this is how they turned it around. And, some of the stories I've shared in terms of, Ben and Dash and Jasmine and Emerson, they've used these very successfully to turn their results around as well. What I'd love you to do is just in the chat, guys, let me know what's the one big thing that you've taken out from this. Like, man, I got to go away and do this. this is the one like action I'm going to go away and do tonight, right? Let me know in the chat. I'd love to know what that is. Now, plan preparation, awesome. Yeah, the plan, right? Great to see. Find my weak areas, awesome, Michelle. Make that wall chart, George, fantastic. Be honest with myself, good. Wall charts to hold myself accountable, Sarah, fantastic, guys. Cool, brilliant, right? As I said, guys, this is simple, okay? It's not complex. So I know that all of you can do it, right? 100% know that all of you can do it. You know, it's just a matter of we need to make the most of the 70% that is left. Now, a couple of final things, guys, before I jump in and answer some of your questions on the Q&A. If you do need more support, like ultimately in the case of, you know, Jasmine, Emerson, Dash, you know, Ben, they all came to Art of Smart because they needed some more support. Like they knew that their results weren't great and they needed to actually turn things around. And so that's where they actually got a tutor in some cases and a mentor in other cases to help them actually either one, really map out the plan of attack for them, or two, actually support them with really targeted content-focused tutoring. So one of the things, if you don't have support already, guys, and you build your plan and you look at it and you go, crap, I'm still feeling overwhelmed, okay? How do I actually turn things around? When you've got 70% of your HSC left on the table still with your trial on HSC, now's probably like the best time if you're ever going to get some tutoring support to actually get some, because it's going to make a significant difference with the amount of marks you have available still on the table, right? So regardless of whether or not you end up working with Art of Smart or you know, the friend around the corner, honestly, guys, we see a lot of students wait way too late, okay, in the journey to actually get the specific support that's targeted around questions, and particularly if a feedback loop is really, really, really important, okay, guys, and your teachers aren't marking stuff and you can't get feedback, that's also then where a tutor can really help. They can give you a really tight feedback loop on your work and your progress, which is really important. Now, if you do need support, as I said, you know, we've helped thousands of students over the last 10 years. On average, the students we've helped have had a significant turnaround, guys, in their results. On average, 19.3%, okay, which is just crazy. That's almost 2 bands. So we do have a really good track record if you're sort of really feeling screwed and going, what do I do in turning it around, right? So I just want to share that, really great. Now, we can do that online if you're sort of scared due to COVID. We've built out a whole support network and system for online tutoring. So if you want, you know, small group classes or one-to-one online, we can help with better internet than we had today. You know, we also run classes and one-on-ones at our campus in Hornsby if you're local to Hornsby, and if you're not, we also have a team across Sydney that do one-on-one face-to-face sessions in your home. So guys, if you do need help, we've got an amazing team. They're all equipped with all the strategies and the research that I've shared with you today. So they're not just going to help with the content, they can actually also look at what's the plan and kick you up the bum for your plan as well, okay? So you can get sessions one-on-one, as many as you need, 1, 10, 20, or with the classes you can join for a term or for the remainder of the term as well. Now, a couple other resources, guys, that we've got for you that are entirely free to help you turn things around. Number one, if you haven't already, jump on our website and hit resources. Just here, we have over 600 plus articles that go through, you know, modules, overviews of modules, practice questions, how to build your study plans, all sorts of stuff. If you haven't, you know, over 70,000 students access it every month, so I'd really recommend get on it and use it, okay? We've also created a free platform, guys, here called HSC Together. That's on our website. So our website's Art of Smart. If you just type that in and go to Google, you'll be able to find it, okay? HSC Together. We've basically aggregated videos that cover all of the HSC for the top 7 subjects by syllabus dot points. If you're stuck, you can jump in, go to chemistry, bio, maths advanced, maths standard, economics, find the syllabus dot point you're struggling with, and there'll be videos there that will help you explain and help you get understanding of the content, okay? And that's all entirely free, guys, as well. Our hope is that that will help you guys build that understanding. Now, you may still need more support because maybe you've got questions that you don't understand, that you need to dive further in, and that's potentially where definitely a tutor can make a significant difference for you because they can just focus on that and really get you working on those questions and giving you that feedback. So check it out, guys. Now, we've also got our YouTube channel. We do videos every single week almost. Just go to YouTube, type Artist Smart TV in, hit the subscribe button, guys, which is just there. And we've got tips and tricks, okay, that are, on how to study plans, how to bounce back, all sorts of things. So if this has been useful, subscribe there. You'll get more suggestions and strategies in the coming weeks as we release as well. Sweet. Question, HSC to get videos, if you want notes, if you want articles and resources, you want to come to our resources section. If you want to get the videos, go to HSC Together and you can access the videos there. If you need tutoring support beyond all of that, and as I said, guys, don't wait too late, regardless if it's us or someone else. Honestly, getting some targeted support will go a long way to turning things around. Bummer, hopefully the internet clears up, guys. So now I'm going to move into Q&A. As I said, we're going to have 10 minutes of Q&A. So let's take a look at all of the questions that have come through. So we've got Evelyn who said, what if you feel like you've done okay in your internal assessments but are worried of how you'll do in the actual HSC exams? Look, I think, Evelyn, I think that's a fear that honestly everyone probably has, being really honest. I think the best thing that you can do there is do as much exam condition preparation. So lots and lots of past papers in timed conditions. So that way you're going to go into the exam and feel as confident as possible. You know, there's no way to feel, completely rock solid, but honestly, the more prep you do, the less anxious you'll feel. And the best way to do that prep is to make sure that you've got a timer with you to do that prep. Great. Okay, let's have a look. Namrita has asked, what if taking notes doesn't work? Well, look, it's a pretty broad question. I think it really probably depends, Namrita, on how you're taking notes. I don't know how you're taking notes, but what I would highlight, guys, in terms of note taking is that notes, you should write your own notes, okay, first of all. That's really important because that's going to be a really critical thing. Once you've written them, though, that's not going to be enough for you to just memorize them all, okay? Like, that's going to be an initial time. It actually means that between writing your notes and then actually prepping for your, doing your exam, you're going to actually need to study those notes. So writing notes, really critical for building the memory base. Once you've got them, you're then going to need to go through a process of actually studying so that you're building it. I don't know what you're doing for that, okay? And I know that's basic, right? But honestly, what I'd love to hear is how do you study them right now? Because if your notes aren't working, it either is that the notes you're writing are not great and there needs to be some rework there, or the way that you're studying them isn't great. And so it's not giving you the return at the other end of the sort of journey. So what I would recommend for actual studying notes, okay, is that one of the most effective ways that you can do is, and it might seem a little like simple again, but a lot of this stuff is actually you want to get those study notes out, you want to get an empty exercise book and you want to rewrite out, not word for word because that's rote. You want to rewrite out the key phrases, the key ideas, the key definitions. You want to go diagrams, pictures, flowcharts, and you want to rewrite out the key stuff. And you want to do that, ideally, we call it the rule of 3. You want to do it at least 3 times because it takes at least 3 times generally we've found from the research that we've done with students for it to actually lock in your brain and actually have increased memory recall by the time you get into the exam. So I think, Namrita, to answer your question there, it's probably more an equation that your notes are probably okay, but I think maybe you need to tweak how you actually are studying with those notes. So let's have a look. Salia has asked, if we have limited time, should we focus on making course notes or on working on past papers? Look, the risk you have, guys, with working on past papers straight away is that you're going to make lots of mistakes, okay? And by making lots of mistakes, you're actually going to be reinforcing information that's not great. Now, we don't want that to happen, okay? So what I'd be recommending is you've got to first identify your weak areas from your prior assessments, go and consolidate those and fix them as much as you can, then move into your past papers. Now, past papers are really critical. It's why at a minimum we've tried to create at least a 2-week buffer in that planning between your examining start and your start of doing your past papers so that you can really do that past paper work. But I wouldn't dive in too early because you'll actually reinforce bad habits. You'll get really good at pattern recognition, You'll go into the exam and feel like you've nailed it because you saw all the questions before, but your answers won't be great and you'll come out with like a 60, 70% result just because you've lost marks on every single question. So hopefully that helps. Good question, Salia. Let's keep on going and looking at this. Okay, so Nicholas has asked a question here, which is, I struggle in English to do practice papers, I procrastinate a lot. Look, I think that's a really common challenge, guys, and that's why what I would recommend is don't try to do a full past paper in a full sitting, because it's just going to be procrastination inducing. It's going to result in lots and lots of procrastination. Instead, what I would recommend is just taking one part of that past paper. It could be a section. It could just be a single question. And this isn't just for English. This is for any subject. Do that one question in time conditions. You're basically going to be doing past papers in little chunks instead of trying to do them in the whole sitting. It means that you're going to have more stuff that you can easily give to your teacher for feedback or your tutor for feedback, okay, guys, which is going to be really important. That way, it's just going to make it so much easier for you to get past papers done, right? You're going to just take them one chunk at a time, one bit at a time. So that would be my answer, not just Nicholas for English, but across the board. Okay, everyone has asked, what if your entire approach and revision has been wrong so far? Well, I guess everyone, I do the sort of activity that we suggested of what have you been doing and what are you going to change, and just identify what are the things you're going to change. I don't think everything that you have done has likely been wrong, and this is for everyone. I wouldn't throw absolutely everything you have done out the window. You want to make changes, but there's going to be some things in there that you've probably done that's probably quite good. Okay, so just be mindful of that. We've got some other questions here. Ricky said, when do you recommend to start tutoring if you're in year 11? So Ricky, you're super on the ball, right? Like getting in here on year 11. Look, what I would recommend is that ultimately year 11, particularly with the new syllabus, is quite foundational for year 12. So a lot of concepts carry over depending on your subjects. I don't know what subjects you're doing, so it's a bit hard for me to answer that. But there is a much bigger degree of carryover and foundational stuff. So with that in mind, what often is a good idea is, this term or at least the start of term 3, if you think you're going to need help, start then. Because you're going to be able to build a relationship with a tutor, so you've got a good relationship going into year 12. You can be able to start consolidating weak areas from year 11 for your end of year 11 exams. So you do better there, which is going to be used for some of your scholarship early entry applications, okay? And then on top of that, okay, you're going to as well, be able to just go into year 12 with greater confidence. Now, Maria, no, I haven't answered your question yet. Don't worry. I have got it here. How do they calculate your cumulative rank, which is your question? I'm assuming what you mean by that is your rank internally, if you can clarify in terms of, okay, how has your rank been over the course of the assessments? If that is the answer for everyone, the way they do that is it's based on the assessment weighting. So if you got 10 out of 20 in assessment 1, it was worth 20%, you got 10, right, for that towards 20. They'll calculate that across each of your assessments. So internally, let's say, overall, you ended up getting, each of your assessments, they work out based on the weighting out of 50 then, what was your overall mark? So maybe you got 35 out of 50 marks totally, okay? And then at that point, they just compare that to everyone else, right? Like, so Mary got 28, you got 30, Nemrita got 34, Salia got 40 out of 50, and then that's how they're going to work out your rank. So it's based on, your mark per assessment and then the weighting, and they use that to work out your total weighted mark, right, for your internals, and they rank that cumulatively. Okay, so hopefully that makes some sense. Okay, great. Let's keep on going through. I've marked that as answered. I've marked that as answered. Fantastic. Let's see what else we have here, guys. What happens if you didn't do well in your first 2 assessments? Abby said they were both worth 30%. So 60%. Now, that's super unusual. Abby, are you in year 12? The reason I say that is that the HSC, NESA basically mandated assessment weightings, and none of the assessment weightings were over 30%. They were all like 20 and 25%. Maybe languages was different, but I just double check that. Look, it does mean that internally you've done 30% so far. They were both worth 30%, okay? And that's 60% internal. We halved that. So they're only worth 30% total, okay? It still means that you've got 70% of your total HSC on the table. So that's still really positive, right? I mean, I think that's still a really awesome thing. You've got 40% internal, or 20% plus your 50 external, which is 70% overall. So I think that's still a huge amount left to actually fight for. And it just means you're going to have to set some goals for what you're going to do in your trials to really turn things around for your internal. John has asked, look, I'm doing my notes for chem and physics, and this again applies for loads of other questions, but how should I actually study to make time for some past papers? Well, how do I make time for past papers as well? I think that was probably more John's question here. And look, my advice here is that, instead of doing total past papers, write the notes for the topic or that syllabus dot point, do a past HSC question on that dot point. Then write the next set of notes for the next dot point, do another past HSC question. That way you're actually integrating doing past papers throughout your study, and you're not waiting to do them all at the end, and you're getting feedback on it as you go. Really simple strategy. Such a game changer, though, in terms of how you should approach your study. So, we've answered that. Gamia said, I find it really hard to focus to complete past papers. Great, Gamia. I would, as I said, do it in chunks, right? Just do one question in that past paper with timed, okay? That's really critical. Shannon has asked, should I do notes for maths as well? Honestly, not really. I think, Shannon, the better approach is going to be to actually go through and identify those weak topics for maths, the weak areas, the places that you've made mistakes on, and then go and find lots of past HSC questions, trial questions for that particular type of question and topic, and really work on that systematically. So that's what I'd really be encouraging and recommending for maths particularly. Cool, guys. Look, I've tried my best to answer as many of those. We've gone fairly over time. But happy to stay on and try to answer as many of those. Just as a final wrap up, yes, guys, to confirm, this will be available as a recording. You will get an email after the webinar is over with the recording link. So stay tuned for that. We will also put it up on YouTube over the next couple of days. So if you haven't subscribed to YouTube, you can also get the recording on YouTube there as well. The email that we will send to you, if you haven't received the workbook already, we'll have the workbook from today's session, so you can go through each of the steps that that I shared with you, that I identified, and you can actually map it out for yourself. Okay, so it's going to make a huge difference on that. We'd love to hear what your plans look like, guys. So once you've written your plans on your wall chart, jump on our Facebook page and send us a message. I'll actually receive it. The team will pass it on to me. I'd love to see, you guys put this into action and actually create a plan for your, catch up for your trials. So shoot it through to us on Facebook via Messenger. Additionally, as I shared, guys, there's a bunch of free resources. We've got HSC Together on our website, which has videos for, 7 subjects for the HSC, every single syllabus dot point. Our resources section on our website has over 600 articles that you can jump into. And of course, guys, we have an incredible team of tutors and mentors that can help you. We've got a really great track record in turning things around, all right? On average, the students we've supported have improved their results by 19.41%. In fact, for the new HSC syllabus cohort last year, that was 22% on average, which was really remarkable. So don't wait too long, guys. If you do need some help, get in touch. Otherwise, all the best. I hope this has been helpful for you in giving you a plan on what to do to catch up and start turning things around. I just want to end by saying, remember, keep going. Do not quit. You've got 70% of your HSC on the table right now. Everyone else is going to quit. This is your opportunity to turn it around. The strategies are simple, so I know that every single one of you can implement it. And that's why I want to see some of those in the Facebook chat. Let us know via Facebook message what your plans look like, because I know you can do it. Brilliant, guys. Have an amazing night and speak to you soon.